Hello and welcome to the Unlocked podcast. Now, you might have noticed this isn't Ricky Locke's voice. I'm the guest host, Steve McDermott. Maybe more about me in a minute. And I've been invited in just for this one episode because we're celebrating 100 episodes of Unlocked, a podcast that helps you be the best version of yourself. And I'm very excited because I've got a very special guest who's, in point of fact, the normal host of this podcast, Mr. Ricky Locke. Hello, Ricky.
Whee! Hello, mate. How's it going? This is quite cool, isn't it? A bit different.
Show other foot, isn't it?
yeah. It's quite nice to sit here. Yeah, nice.
So what I like about podcasts, right, is to dive straight into the meat of it, right? So I'm just going to ask you a question because you're my guest right off the bat, and it's at the front of my mind. Young person going out into the world for the first time. So I don't know, 16, maybe 18. What one bit of advice would you give them?
Wow. Okay. That's a very good loaded question from the beginning, Steve. That's good.
Isn't
okay.
It? Let's get to the meat.
Let's get to the meat. Okay. So 16. So I'm now putting my dad head on now, right? Thinking about Alma when she's older, right? Biggest piece of advice, I think, is to... I'm allowed to swear on my own podcast episode.
I don't know, you can bleep it later.
Okay, we can bleep it later. I believe that because of what I've learned in the last couple of years of doing these episodes, fundamentally, this is all about living life to your values and just doing whatever fills your cup and we'll talk about this probably a little bit later on, the whole treading eggshells thing, as I mentioned. But this is all about fundamentally, fuck everything, fucking what everything else we know, but I'll bleep that out. But this is just about fundamentally understanding that to be the best version of yourself, you've just got to go out there and live your life to your values, not dictated by anyone else, not dictated by what we see, society norms and all that, but fundamentally what makes you happy and doing the things that fill you with joy and fills your cup. Because I just believe that for so long, especially in my life as well, from a lot of these episodes, that life is dictated by society, dictated by what we believe, which we know in what the work we do. Often it's not true. And actually, you can just waste and coast so much of your life worrying about things that aren't in your control and doing the things that just don't make you happy. So why would you want to do that? It's very easy said to do it, then it's easy to say that than doing it. But
okay, I think I totally agree. My switch on it, being a little bit older than you, would be that most 16-year-olds, including me, haven't a clue what gives them joy and what the values are. And the values change. But I think it's like having that in your mind and say you might need to go out there and try out a load of stuff. So if you're asking me that question, if I set a 16-year-old, go, look, you won't have a clue. You might think it's this that you want to do. You might be chasing the car, the status, the whatever. You know this. If you've ever spoken in a school, Ricky, right? And there's a load, again, 16-year-olds. The only question they want to know is, how much money do you earn?
That's it,
right? You know, well, that's you got to pay mortgage, but that's still kind of really low down on my thing. So it's good advice. I agree, right? So that's the first question, right? And it ties in with the next one because what's on my mind right now, depending on when this podcast goes out, but as it's being recorded, we're 2 weeks away from my first grandchild.
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course. I thought you were going to say 2 weeks away from my birthday, but that's important as well.
Who knows? So it might, And it's interesting. A good friend of mine asked me, he said, I'd be interested to see how you feel when your grandchild's born compared to how you felt when your 3 kids were born. That in itself is interesting. But the thing I was also reflecting on was what advice would I give to my grandchild that I didn't give to my kids, right? So my next question is, how old's Alma now?
She's 2 and 3 months, or no, 2 and 2 months. Yeah.
And I know because I saw the little video on Instagram when you had a little adventure and you went to Bruges.
Oh, Eurostar. That's right, yeah.
And you said that was it. I think you said the word fascinating, which is, of course,
it
one of
was,
our favorite words, isn't it, right? But knowing what you know now, what would be your top tip to a parent?
Yeah.
What you believe makes a great parent, and B, a grandparent.
Oh, interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So let's go for that first one then, for the parent thing. So for a lot of my studies in this personal development world and the work we do, I've come to believe now through, I think, just becoming a parent as you do, the question I often ask myself is, what lessons am I teaching Alma? So whatever I do now, the thread that just runs through everything, if it's a piece of work that comes in, one of our values is fun, right? We like working with fun people. If something comes into the business and it's like, that doesn't feel like it's really fun, I don't want to do that. And I wouldn't want Alma to like go off and do things that doesn't make her happy, fill a cup and all that sort of thing. But I've now come to this point where it's like, okay, so if everything is thread is what lessons am I teaching my daughter? The advice for me is like to be a role model. I'm a parent now. I've got to be a role model. So I can't expect her to do any of these things if I'm not doing it myself. So I'm now starting to really practice, be my own preacher and practice what I preach. Being a bit more honest. My whole life as a kid, I was taught to say yes, 3 bags full. We don't challenge stuff, Ricky. Just walk on eggshells, and it just doesn't work. It causes pain, anxiety, and all these sort of things. And when you then start self-reflecting, go, God, the pain that I felt in my life, I don't want that on her. So the best tip I'd say about parenting is obviously it's about role model. Everything that you do now is asking yourself that question: is what lesson am I teaching my kid or my child?
Okay, give me a specific, right? Because we've had this conversation off microphone, which is that's great, isn't it? When they're behaving, whatever behaving looks like, right? And we've got to be careful with labels, terrible twos and all that, and terrible teenagers. Trust me, mine are all grown up. There's not a real age when they're in some challenge, right? But let's get really specific. So we might have some young parents listening to this. And as I said, my son and his partner Danny are about to have their first grandchild. Going against the convention at the moment, which is to know the sex in advance. They've gone old school, so we don't know if it's going to be a boy or a girl. And there's some labels there as well, isn't there? Between boys and girls that we got to be careful as parents, right? So when I was a parent first time round, the number one thing, because it was what was taught on the telly really, was if the kids were messing about, you put them on the naughty step. Right? So my 3, I well remember Megan on the top step, Philip middle, Tom on bottom. I'm assuming that we've moved on from that. So let's say it's not normally Monday's yours is daddy daycare, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
Monday fun day.
Well, give us a real example of one time recently when Alma kind of maybe got out. What was your parenting thing for dealing with discipline challenges?
When daddy lost his shit,
being a role model, right?
Yeah. So baboon mode, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard, right, as parenting, firstly, right? It's definitely challenging, but it's fun as well. It's very magical as well. So to Tom, good luck, mate. It's going to be fantastic, wonderful. Right. What I've come to realize is that Alma, and obviously as Tom will now start to understand, and yours having a grandkid, the children haven't developed the logical part of that brain, that left kind of sided thinking, and it's just baboon mode, freeze, fight, flight. So quite often where I have lost my shit recently, where Alma's in this mode now, toddler, throwing stuff, chucking stuff everywhere. But she doesn't sit there and go, Daddy, I'm going to really piss you off right now and chuck things at the telly to make you angry because I just want to. No, it's just like, hey, I'm just in baboon mode. Like, I want to have fun. Let's explore. Baboon, wow, out of the cage. And she hasn't understood that, okay, that's Daddy's very expensive television. I should not throw things at that. She doesn't understand that. So what you have to realize is like, okay, let's just, take a step back there. Great book here. You might want to read this as well, Stephen, probably Tom as well. Recommendation out here. It's called There's No Such Thing as Naughty. Fantastic book. And the first thing she teaches you is the SNOT principle. SNOT, S-N-O-T, which means it's not about you. They are going through like massive feelings, huge feelings, and it's very, very important. So as a kid, it'd be like, Ricky, pack it in now, stop it now, get on that bloody naughty step, right? But actually it's about validating the feelings and understanding what they're actually going through and trying to be a little bit less hard on them. But I have done, Steve, I've had to take Alma on to a timeout. I did do the naughty step and I roared my eyes out after because I was like, what the hell? I've upset my child. But what happened was, she was throwing stuff and I told her, in a really calm voice, Alma, those toys are for playing with, not for throwing. And then she goes, and starts it again. I'm like, fucking pissed off now, one more time, Alma, Daddy's told you. And one more time. So I said, right, okay, we're going to time out. But I had to drop a boundary and say, Daddy's taking the toy away from you. Rather than saying, give that to Daddy, because she's not going to. I said, I'm taking the toy away from you. And I took her to time out and she was crying. I said, look, Daddy, just in a really calm voice, I'm going to get down to a level. I'm not going to get shouting over bearing. I'm just going to talk to her in a really nice level and say, Alma, toys are for playing. It's not for throwing, okay? You understand? She went, yeah. I said, should we go pick them up? She went, yeah. And then she did. And then we made it really fun. So I started like to distract her brain, distract that pattern and go, oh, let's make it really fun. Let's pretend we're animals and go, rah, rah. And she did it. And it was really great. Now, the quickest way, easiest thing to do is to just go, on that naughty step, I'm going to tell you off because of conditioning parenting. That's what boomer parenting my mum and dad used to do, right? But it's about now understand this new world is about let's validate what's going on. Let's understand Tom and you will do this, and Candy will do this quite a lot. I often say this, it's okay. Daddy understands. Even if you don't understand at all, you just go, Daddy understands. And she goes, yeah.
Okay.
And you say, you got some big
Correct.
feelings, Alba? And she goes, yeah. And then you go, okay, let's do it. So yeah.
It's a massive topic. So all I would say to you with the grey hair of experiences,
Yeah,
you've got to be easy on yourself as a parent as well, because you're not always going to get it right. And even though you've read all the books, they still don't always behave what you expect. My number one tip actually is seamless response. Whether it's that, I understand it's just, and it's cliches, often cliches because they're true. Counting to 10 before you go to DEFCON 10. You know, I remember years ago when Megan, who's now 28, when she was maybe 4, 5, and she was kicking off. And I remember saying, got quite angry, didn't create that moment, and went, if you keep doing that, you're never going to the cinema ever again. Right?
Yeah.
So I think consequences for your behaviour are important, but you've got to just count to 10, right? We need to move on, right? I've got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll see how we are for time, right? On my podcast, this 100th episode, right? Let's talk about mental and physical health next then.
Yeah.
You can pick either of those, right? And I want some practical stuff now, right?
Okay,
What's your number one tip on physical health then?
Get to the gym.
Right? Getting into shape, whatever you want to call it, going to the gym, whatever. You know, what I do know is the number one excuse that people use is, or reason, if not excuse, is I don't have the time. Not that. Whether, and you could argue that for mental health as well, but let's say physical. So because I know you've been on a bit of a looking at that, and I wouldn't call it a fitness kick because I think that sounds like it'll be over, right? It's lifestyle's a bit cliched as well. But what's your number one tip on being physically more healthy, Ricky?
It boils down to a bit like what I said. What lessons am I teaching Alma again? Because you know, got to be there for her now. I can't. Someone once said to me, when you go through like mental health and physical health, and you real low point. Someone said to me, there's so many people that you serve, whether it's performing, presenting, coaching, you can't cheat people by dying early. And I was like, oh, big mic drop moment there. I was like, there's a lot of people depend on you, Ricky, you know, and you're a father. And I was like, oh shit, because we know when we're mentally ill, physically ill, we're down, physiology's low. So for me, it boils down to your values. You know, no matter what's really important to you, I was neglecting massively mental health, physical health. I think mental health and physical health was like on the top 20. It was like 18 and 19. I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. And then we had to go back and went, yeah, that should be number 1 and 2. Because if I can't do that, I can't do fun, fulfillment, family, creativity.
So just as a little aside, when we say we have to go back, I know the other thing that you highly value is having a sounding board or a coach. So when you say we have to go back, this is having a conversation with the coach that you're using.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this was, so the conversation, we were doing a value session, right? So me and you, we teach people all amazing stuff, right? We're serving people all the time. And I think you forget sometimes to serve yourself.
Yeah.
And she asked me this question, Vanda Varga, who's an NLP practitioner. We're big fans of NLP. She said, Ricky, what's your values? And I was like, I haven't done my values in a long time. She went, why not? I went, don't know. Let's do it. And we started mapping out. And I was going, she went, what's your first one? I went, fun. Yeah. Family, fulfillment, freedom, autonomy, creativity. And then you go down the list of like money, lifestyle, all those sorts of things. And it was like 18, 19, mental health, physical health. And she said, stop. You know that you can't do any of these first few if you don't look after your mental health. I was like, yeah, shit.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, so clean question exercise, right? Clean question. I love this statement, which is, and when blank or and when X or Y. So in this case, if it's, and when I'm feeling shit or and when I'm feeling tired, what would I like to have happen? Well, I'd like to be fit tomorrow. I want to make sure that I'm going to feel great, motivated. Cool, I'm going to push through it and go to the gym. So even though it's really hard, maybe I don't have a time because I'm parent, I'm tired all the time, right? It's like, well, actually, when I'm tired, what would I like to have happen? I'd like to have a bit more energy. What do I need to do that? I need to go gym and get fit. And then there's that, you know, time is finite, isn't it? So I want to get the best. So that's the top tip for physical health is ask yourself that question. And when you're feeling a bit crap or if, you want a bit more energy, what would you like to have happen? Then go do it.
Right. Yeah.
The mental health thing is, I mean, it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? And, I'm very privileged a lot of these things I'm learning in my 30s, that there's people out there who get therapy in their 70s and 80s who've never really dealt with this. Massively small town belief, you'll never amount to anything. This is just, and now I know in hindsight, it was brought purely out of protection and love.
Sure.
They brought me up to be in that way. But now I understand, like we've mentioned a lot in our conversations, we get to choose our beliefs. I think it's now about questioning what that thought is. So a great CBT, this is one of the episodes about putting your thoughts on trial, is when you do get those comparisonitis, we've got social media, we're always looking at other things, is you question that thought and you go, right, firstly, is this thought hindering or helpful? Okay, it's hindering me, right, let's talk about it. So there's a piece of paper, 2 columns. What's the thoughts for that? So like a courtroom situation, what's the thoughts for and against? Let's judge it. And then you judge it and go, a bit like in a courtroom, I'm going to listen to the prosecutor, listen to the defense. Oh, okay. So for example, this happened to me many years ago. I was quite low when I lost my career, lost everything. You remember global pandemic, Steve?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We lost everything.
Seems a while
right?
ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah, no one was booking speakers or magicians. But when I was looking out there doing the magicians who went back to work, and I was like, why are they going back to work and I'm not? If you do that exercise, I started going, oh, okay, these magicians have been going around for 20 years. They've got more experience. They've got more contacts. They've got more networks. And you start going, yeah, I shouldn't be thinking that. Now I can see it logically, left-sided brain, not the baboon. So that's the mental health thing. Is there's loads of techniques out there that you can explore. And I think the top tip for that is to just start questioning your thoughts and then do that exercise. And that's a real good tip to help you with your mental health.
Yeah. What I would add to that with my challenge with mental health, which is a long time ago now, was that I used to believe that you could be like a glass half empty, glass half full person. You could be positive, whatever. You could talk yourself out of something. And what I know, having had clinical depression now, which I didn't know back then, was you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So we're talking now just about, maybe some low level, not up for it, right? But my advice to our listeners on this one-off edition would be, don't fall into the belief that you have a choice.
Yeah.
No, what I really discovered was, controversially, people might not agree with this, is that people are still unsure what causes depression, right? If we talk about the extreme now, not just feeling a bit down, but clinical depression. The jury's out on that, so we don't even know what causes it. They might not solve it. But my number one advice to everybody listening to this would be, if you reach that place, you're not going to think yourself out of it by just need to be more positive.
Yeah.
And we know people don't understand that, because a lot of people will say to you, can't believe you're depressed. What have you got to be unhappy about, right? So if you are listening to this and you've reached that spot, get some help.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What we're talking about is when you're just not feeling up for it, how do I manage my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's that. And so I think, to summarize what you said there, it's like, it's so dangerous to compare yourself to other people, for sure.
Yeah.
We talk about growth mindset, don't we? And I think really a better thing to do is to say, when I see these people who might be tempted to feel they're doing better than me, how can I help them? How can I use them to inspire me to be a better version of myself? Is a better question.
Use it as fuel, to drive you forward. Yeah.
Right,
just on that note, Steve,
time, right? I like, when I'm a host of a podcast, Ricky, unlike some people, I like to cut to chase, right? So we'll cover some ground there. Just a few tips, some practical tips, right?
Well, just one tip, Steve. Just going to add on that, just to reprise what you said, and a lot of stuff and thoughts and stuff that come from me is seeking the stigma of therapy. Go speak to people, because there is this massive stigma of it, and it's just normal. So go normalize that. If you are feeling really down, listen to this. As Steve said, seek professional help. It's normal.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, everybody says this. A good friend of mine, sadly, his son decided that he didn't want to be here anymore. And he's done a lot of work around this. So he had to really educate himself around that whole topic, right? And you all know what I'm talking about, right? And his whole thing is, it's easy to say, talk about it, but it's a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing you need to understand, is if you or somebody you love are suffering mentally, they will find it really difficult to articulate that. So you need to find other channels sometimes, and it might just be not they're expecting them to say anything back, but just going, I'm here, right? So that, asking somebody all right and then asking them again, are you all right? That's good advice. But second time, they still might not be able to find the words, right?
Yeah. It
so
takes a lot of courage,
recognise that. Massive
Huge,
topic.
yeah.
But I think it's important that people like you and me say, it's good to get a coach. It's good to get a therapist. It's good to tell people, I was really severely mentally ill. And by the way, I'm not anymore. So there's hope, right? Because it's men in it. Men, listen to this. It's men. Why? It's not to be embarrassed about. It's not to be shy about. It's just we need to talk about it. Right. I'm conscious of time. Right, I've got a couple of more things I want to think about now.
Let's
right.
go for it. Yeah.
One is, what's the best book or idea you've come across in this year, maybe 2024? I'll give you maybe 2023.
Okay.
And the answer might be the same. What's the best book you've ever read in terms of being able to take something from it and act on it?
Wow, bloody hell, that's loaded, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know,
it's good. I like it. Cut into the chase.
Listeners some value, so that might be a book they've not read or you've not mentioned in the past, so you might remind them. It might be some of your big heroes. I mean, you could pick one or two. It might not even be a book. It might be a person or an idea, but it's probably come from a book. Knowing that I know you've read a lot of personal development business books.
I'm allowed.
I'll tell you what. While you're thinking about it, I'll tell you one of mine.
Go on then.
I've got loads. It's been around a while. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Don't get mentioned so much these days. When I was back in the day when I was doing a lot of work with Dale Carnegie, who also, of course, wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, the big book that we were all talking about would have got fired if Carnegie had found out. It wasn't Dale Carnegie's book. It was the hot new thing on the block was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think it still stands true. A lot of the keys from that, you know, and why a book works for me is if you can remember it, having to look around for it, you know. I still use a lot of the language, and sometimes you think, oh, I must have come up with that. And then you think, oh, no, that's from there. It's because you've been using it so much, right?
It's in your subconscious,
So Begin with End in Mind, I think, comes from 7 Habits. Which is a great way to think about things. This is one of my favourite things that I've learned from 7 Habits that I've had to really work hard on over the years. First, seek to understand before being understood. It's one of the biggest things it's taken me 30 years to learn. Which is, if I was to sum that up, you learn a lot more by listening than you do by talking, right? So figure out what they're thinking first before you tell them what to think, right? Sharpen the saw. That's like work on everything. So that's the one I picked. Now let's give you a bit of thinking time. What are you going to add to that for our listeners to read or look at?
I'm going to be cheeky and give you a couple here. So a bit like that one. So Think and Grow Rich. I love that one by Napoleon Hill because it's not really telling you that, oh, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to be rich. It's all the wonderful things about, you know, beliefs, about confidence, burning the boat. That comes obviously from there. You know, the wonderful things about manifesting, networking, mindsets. A great book, that one. The One Thing for productivity. Big fan of that one. That testing question, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or necessary. I've used that so many times where I've been stuck in a hole. Maybe it's a business goal. You know, Christmas time, you go, God, there's not a lot of work here. What am I going to do? Huge, that one. And the last one, I'll always remember this one because it was like real, you know, early adopter into this one, which was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Suzanne Jeffers. Love that whole phrase. And again, just talking about how, you know, fear doesn't exist, you know, it's all about what you do with it. So top 3 for me were those ones. Yeah. Confidence, productivity, and then, pushing you forward. Good books.
Right. We're out of time pretty much now. Right. Let's leave them with a quote then. I like a good quote to play up, right? This is like desert island quotes now.
We're going to do tennis back and forth, aren't we?
We're not going to do 10, no. It's kind of like pick one.
Yeah.
One that you live by, one that you have on the wall, one that you think comes to mind. I don't know what your favourites would be.
Yeah. You'll know this one, Steve. I talk about this a lot. This runs through everything I ever do, whatever it is. People won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did. They would never forget how you made them feel. 100%.
Like that. Yeah. One of my all-time heroes, which now a lot of people don't even know who this person is. I've discovered from our workshops, right? Muhammad Ali. Some of your listeners might remember him. Oh, so many quotes to pick from with Ali, right? But maybe my favourite is, impossible is nothing. Quite like that. Well, thanks for being my guest, Ricky.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah.
Well,
what was it for?
100
episodes, wasn't it? Yeah, 100 episodes.
100 episodes. Right, Well done, you.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, it's Ricky, and I'm just pausing the episode just to remind you that if you do love this episode, then head over to Apple Podcasts or Podchaser and leave us a quick little review. Even if you don't want to write anything, you can just click the 5 stars, leave a rating, and it helps this podcast get shared to more people around the world. Now, I know that you're a really nice person and you're listening to this episode, so thank you. So let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts. Keep on being awesome, and let's go back to the episode. Goodbye.